And here we are. We are in Rome. What happened in Monte Carlo happened, and what happened in Barcelona happened, and what happened in Madrid happened. And here we are. We are in Rome. What happened in Monte Carlo happened, and what happened in Barcelona happened, and what happened in Madrid happened. And here we are.
We are in Rome.
What happened in Monte Carlo happened.
So just like Rafa said, we are going to be covering Rome today. Welcome to another episode of the Point by Point Tennis Podcast. As every week, your hosts here, Carlos and Jish. And today, just like my favorite player, Rafa said, we are in Rome now. We are in the last tournament of the clay court season. And we have definitely had some pretty interesting results all the way up to this point. And before we go into Rome, we're actually going to cover some of the results that we also had in Madrid for both the ATP and the WTA. And we'll start there with Carlos Alcaraz defending his title again in Madrid. So he defended his title in Barcelona, and he's also able to defend his title in Madrid. Very surprising opponent in the final, in John Leonard Struff. And also a very surprising result in the final. Probably a lot of people would have expected to see Alcaraz dominate a lucky loser. But he actually came to play, and he showed a great battle in that final
tournament.
Yeah, amazing tournament, amazing results, and we're going to go into just how amazing and crazy that was. But nonetheless, it is Alcaraz who is able to defend his title and really cement himself as probably the favorite to go into Roland Garros, barring what happens in Rome. So pretty incredible result there for him. On the women's side, we had a rematch of the Stuttgart final in Arena Sabalenka and Iga Swiatek. And this time, it is Sabalenka who wins the title.
Yeah.
So another big tournament win for Sabalenka this year. She won Australian Open in the beginning of the year. She's played many finals in the Masters 1000 events. And now she wins another one. So really great result. And who would have thought? You were saying before we started the episode, right, that she was known for being unreliable.
Yeah.
And she has been the most reliable player this year in the women's side. So that is an incredible turnaround. Yeah, from Sabalenka. So incredible result in Madrid for her. And again, also for Iga, great result, making another final and continuing to show that she is the cream of the crop in the clay. And it's nice to see that Sabalenka has joined her at the top there. So we'll talk about all of that. We'll talk about some of the really nice stories on both the men's and the women's side. In terms of results, we had a lot of surprise runs in this tournament. Not only Jan-Lennard Struff in the final there in Madrid, but we have some other ones as well, both on the men and the women. So we'll talk about that. There's some controversies that we'll have to cover because everybody's talking about it. So we'll just have to dedicate a little bit of time to that. Cake gate is a thing.
Something to do with cake.
I can't believe that we're going to talk about cake as part of one of the topics of a tennis show. But
birthday cake, right?
Yeah, birthday cakes. So we're going to have to talk about that because a huge controversy came out of that. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the ranking updates given the crazy results that we've seen so far in the clay. And once we do that, we're going to jump into, like Nadal said, to Rome. We are in Rome. This is the last Masters 1000 event prior to the French Open. It is the last event to sort of see who's who in the clay court season. And it is one of the most telling events, right? Because this is the event that really most, in terms of the conditions on the court, right? It's the most similar to Roland Garros.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a good litmus test to see, how healthy is Djokovic. And on the women's side, Ons Jabeur, who actually was the defending champion in Madrid, and she was a finalist in Rome last year. So that is a lot of points that she didn't really get to defend in Madrid. And then
how's she feeling? She's also
that's something that we'll see.
Yeah.
We just don't know, right? I'm actually surprised that we're seeing her in this tournament,
right? Yeah.
So we'll see. So we have some storylines in that sense. Rafa said that we use his clip of here we are in Rome using Rafa,
but he's not there.
He's actually out of the
pulled out.
event, unfortunately. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well and what he said when he withdrew from this tournament. And honestly, for me, the biggest thing is, we get for the first time this year, we get Djokovic and Alcaraz on the same tournament, on the same draw. So I am super excited about that. Maybe a little bit unfortunate that maybe Djokovic is not 100%, but nonetheless, just having the possibility of it happening is something that excites me. And then we'll finish with a few things here and there. We'll talk a little bit about challenger events, talk about what happened in our fantasy competition, and we'll end also with some Rome trivia. We'll put Jish on the spot again, as we've been doing on a week-by-week basis now. But with that, we'll go right into the episode. Let's start in the ATP side in Madrid with the results of Carlos Alcaraz defeating John Leonard Struff in the final. And I just want to open up the floor for you just to see what are your initial thoughts on both Alcaraz's result and also the fact that John Leonard Struff was the guy who beat him in the final. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think for Alcaraz, it's definitely, I think this was expected. I expected it of him. We anticipated a very tough match against Zverev earlier on in the tournament. However, that did not turn out as planned. No. Alcaraz was just in a different level. Beat him 6-1, 6-2. A routine win for Alcaraz. However, he's just moving great. He's anticipating great. If you look at the highlight reels, it's it's actually very impressive highlight reels you'll see. It's really fun to watch. He's moving so well. And not surprised and super happy he won. Honestly, it's his home country Master Series 1000 event. So
he really seems to feed off the crowd in that event.
Exactly.
In both events.
He uses the crowd too, right? Quite a bit. But very impressed also with Struff, because Struff, he had to play qualies to get in, right? And he actually got in as a lucky loser, which we talked about earlier. And he lost to an interesting person.
Another interesting story in this event,
which we'll talk a little bit more about. And then ended up beating that person again. And that person's name is?
Aslan Karatsev.
Yeah.
He's back from the grave.
Both of them, in a way, are back from the grave.
Yes, they both
Struff,
are.
You mentioned had come from almost outside of the 100.
Yeah, he was outside. He was outside the top 100.
Yeah, top 100,
and he's now number 28 in the world with this result. Absolutely absurd.
Amazing, especially.
So he, just to be clear, he came back from 100 prior to Monte Carlo. So at the beginning of the clay
court season.
Yeah,
and he's known for the clay court season, right? I mean, he's a great clay court player, and so this is like a dream run for him, probably going into the French. Right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's interesting because he's kind of recently, I would say, he's better on clay than he's been on other surfaces, but in general, he's actually pretty. He's similar in all surfaces, and he has the kind of game that you would think would translate really well to grass, because he plays serve and volley. He's really, he's really attack oriented. So I'm really curious to see with this form that he has right now, will he be able to carry this over into the grass season? Not only in Roland Garros, but also in the grass season, because I think he does have a game style that can translate. And what really surprised me about Struff in this match is that, the brand of tennis that he was playing, he was just all out attack, no matter what. I mean, he clearly knows, Alcaraz is the guy who has the most weapons, right? He has the more skills, but in a tournament like Madrid, where you have the altitude, where you can take advantage of how fast the ball travels in the air, and he's so tall as well, has a great serve, he really took advantages of all of those factors to play attack-only tennis. His return of serves were damn near like Djokovic, like at some points.
Yeah.
Like he was returning not only in this match, but especially in the match also with Tsitsipas, who he beat in the quarterfinal. That was just incredible the way he was returning, and it honestly was the difference in that match. And it almost was the winning factor against Alcaraz, and it took Alcaraz being special as he is to find a way, right, to navigate playing in a match where he couldn't really use all of his skills, right? We didn't really see him do the drop shot that much. Yeah. Yet, in the biggest moments, he was still able to use it, right, because he's that special. But it was hard for him to do it, right? It was hard for him. Like for example, in contrast, when he played Tsitsipas in the Barcelona final, he had, somewhere like between 12 to 14 outright drop shot winners. Like absurd stuff.
Tsitsipas wasn't playing.
Well, that's what I'm saying, right? That's what I'm saying, that he didn't have the type of attack style that could trouble Alcaraz. And Struff was really returning everything at his feet with intention. And he was trying to...
super aggressive.
He was trying to decide the points, right? I'm either going to win this point or I'm just going to miss it. And I'm not going to let him dictate. And it really worked. Like, I thought that he played amazing tennis, from the middle of the first set to sort of the beginning of the third set. He was the better player for the most part of that, like for the middle part of that match. And it just took something special from Alcaraz in terms of his champion's mentality. And that's the thing that we continue to always compare him, right, to the big three, not because he's on that level yet. He's not even close. Let's be real. He's not close to that level in terms of the legacy, right, and the accomplishments, and he still needs things to improve, right? But there is that X factor of being able to win ugly, to problem solve in a match, right, and to understand that you need to change a little bit your tactic to make sure that you can, adjust to what's coming to you. And Alcaraz did that. I mean, he started playing a little bit more percentage tennis in the third set, and he was able to get more balls in play and make Struff had to go for more. And eventually, he was playing a very high-risk game, so eventually the errors came. And that was the difference, right? Alcaraz was a little bit more steady in the end. But I got to say, I'm super impressed with what I saw from Struff, and he really earned Alcaraz's respect in that match. He got him frustrated a lot, and especially in the second set. But in the end, just Alcaraz is just special, and he was able to navigate.
Do you think the form of Struff is going to, translate towards
It's
Rome,
tough to say. Well, actually, interesting fact. He's not even in Rome because
because he couldn't. He had to play qualies again. But
he had to play qualies again because even though he's ranked 28, the cutoff for the seeds is before the tournament in Madrid ends. Yeah. So he technically would have had to go into qualies. But to go into qualies, you need to be done with the tournament prior.
I wonder. So he can't even play, can he? Or
no, he's not playing.
Can he get a wild card?
I think it's too late. I think it was too late by the time. Yeah, I think the wild cards. Even then, usually Rome gives the wild cards to Italians, or previous champions or something like that. Or, so I don't think either way he was going to be able to play in that sense. But he will be seated at Roland Garros, which is great. No, he might not be able to play Rome, but he's going to be seated at Roland Garros, which is honestly good for him, but also good for some of the top players. They don't have to run into him early on. I mean, that would have been rough to see him in the first round if you're a Djokovic or somebody like that, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's tough to say if it will translate to Roland Garros, because Madrid is such a different event, right? Madrid typically is not very predictive of who does well in Roland Garros unless you're Nadal, right? Because he's won it 5 times, Madrid. He's won... even then, he's won Madrid only 5 times compared to 14 Roland Garros, right? So it's not very predictive in who's going to win it because of that altitude thing, right? The conditions are so different, and his style was really good for this type of tournament. So I would say that it's going to be tough. On the flip side of it, he did beat Alcaraz in Roland Garros 2 years ago, which is interesting. But I mean, 2 years ago, Alcaraz was not this good. But he also played him very tough in Wimbledon last year. They played 5-setter there, Alcaraz and Struff. So, he is a guy that I think, like I said, his game can translate. It's a matter of how consistent can he be with that risky style of play, right? So we'll see. I think in a slow surface it's going to be harder for him. But regardless, I really,
I think he was moving really well too.
Yeah, I was really surprised and really impressed by him.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Anything else from that match before we cover other things related to Madrid?
No, it was pretty entertaining.
Yeah. So maybe let's continue. Let's stay on the men's side, and maybe let's talk about some other stories. So Struff actually played Aslan Karatsev in the semifinals. Like, who would have thought that? Aslan Karatsev just came out of nowhere and just had so many impressive wins. I think you called it in our last podcast that he was going to beat Medvedev. So good call on you there.
I was so surprised he did it, though.
Yeah, I mean, Medvedev is still a little suspect on clay, right?
Still, he had actually a pretty good clay court season.
Yeah, so far he's having a pretty good season. But Karatsev is just playing on another level at the moment, and good wins over him, over Medvedev, over Zhang, who was another great story in himself, who had some pretty tight wins. I believe he played like 3 he played 3 tiebreakers in a row, I believe, in matches 2 or 3 final set tiebreaks. Was that 2 or 3?
It looks like 2 in each match.
2 in each match. So he played very, very tight sets, coming from behind, coming from breaks down. I mean, with Taylor Fritz, he was down a set and a break. He was able to turn that around and win that. And Taylor Fritz himself has been such a such a great story, because he literally was never great on clay. And this year he's made a lot of semifinals. Yeah. And he played semifinals Monte Carlo, semifinals in whatever the tournament in, was it Banja Luka? He was either that one or Munich. And, in Madrid now he played in round of 16 against Zhang, and he played him tough. He looked like the better player for a good amount of it. And Zhang was able to turn it around, and it was just all attacking tennis. So it was really interesting to see that on a clay court. It wasn't any long rallies, pushing the ball, anything like that. It was all just all out attack, big serving, both of them, big serving, big forehands. And this guy, I don't think he even had played a tour level clay event before this tournament. I think he had mostly played on either the juniors or challengers or something like that, but not on the tour level. And look what he did. So that was an impressive run from him. But Karatsev takes care of him in the quarters, and then in the semis he runs into Struff again. And they actually played
in the last round of qualies.
Exactly, in the last round of qualifiers. And for those who don't know, sometimes when players lose in qualifying right before the event, there could be somebody else that withdraws from the event, either an injury or something like that. And when that happens, whoever lost in qualies but was very close to winning, or maybe it goes by seeding or something like that, they call you back into the tournament to fill that empty spot. So Struff had actually lost to Karatsev in qualifying. And then he came back into the draw and worked his way all the way through, beating Tsitsipas, and then beating Karatsev in the semifinal in that rematch. So what an incredible story there. I can't believe that that happened. There's so many great memes related to this on Reddit. So it was just a great story overall. But what do you think about the fact that, a lot of these ranked players didn't, live up to their ranking? Like, I feel like there's always a narrative with, men's tennis versus women's tennis. And this is very different now, right? We have a very solid top 2-3 on the women's side. And on the men's side, we have Alcaraz consistent, but there's some weird results happening with the others.
Yeah, I mean, Sinner didn't play this one.
That's true.
I think he's also one of the better clay court players right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess another person you can argue that didn't play that well, I mean, is Tsitsipas, right?
Right.
You would want to see him go into at least the semis or the into the finals.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I mean, people did get to later in the tournament, but I think clay in general, it has such a strong field that, I mean, Struff isn't. I consider him pretty strong clay
quarterfinals Monte Carlo.
Yeah,
as well.
I mean, and there's some other people, like I guess Karatsev somehow got there, but it could have easily been any of these other players too, like Fritz.
Yeah,
I think Fritz was playing great clay court tennis too. So
there's just a lot of great competition.
There's just great competition right now, and they were tight. You can see like there are tiebreakers involved, and so yeah, I think that will change a little bit when going into Roland Garros because it's best out of 5.
Yeah,
and the fitness level obviously is a huge factor.
Even in Rome, there's been a certain consistency on who's won that tournament. I'll save that for later because part of the trivia. Although part of this answer, right? Of course. But Rome has been more traditional in terms of who wins, right? Versus Madrid. Madrid, we've had
a number of other
a number of weird results.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the altitude has a play.
Exactly. It rewards different styles in that event, and it's the third event in a row on the clay, and maybe some players are a little fatigued there.
Not Alcaraz,
but he didn't play Monte Carlo, so he hasn't played 3 events in a row.
That's true.
Now in Rome, he's going to play his third. And I'm actually pretty interested to see how that's going to translate for him. Like, now he's going to play Rome. Last year, he didn't play Rome, and it actually seemed to affect him. Like, he lost momentum because he didn't play Rome, plus there's a 2-week gap before the start of Roland Garros. So, basically 3 weeks without playing, and he was kind of rusty in that tournament. I mean, if we all remember that in the second round, he almost went out. He was match point down against Ramos Vignolas. So, I think this is the right decision to play in Rome. And even if he loses early, he has the reps in. Yeah. And I think he'll be ready regardless. So it's good that he's going to play. But yeah, with this result for Alcaraz, he is guaranteed to become world number 1 again as long as he plays his first match in Rome. Because Djokovic is the defending champion in Rome, right? So he cannot gain any more points. And Alcaraz did not play at all in Rome this year, or last year. So as long as he plays, he'll get 10 points, and that will be enough to pass Djokovic. So back to number 1, Alcaraz. I think that's where he deserves to be. He's been playing amazing.
Yeah.
He has the best record this year. He's won 94% of his matches this year. So that is number 1 on tour. So that's super impressive. His only losses were Cam Norrie in that tournament where he got a little bit injured at the end, and then Sinner, who's been one of the best players of the year. So I think this has been another dominant tournament for Alcaraz. Amazing stuff. And I can't wait to see how he continues in Rome. I think we've talked about most of the big stories on the men's side. One last thing that I wanted just to shout out quickly is that, Borna Coric came back. Yeah. Had a great tournament. He's been missing in action for a while. Did not expect them to see him do this well on the clay. But this, like we said it a lot already. Madrid is weird and different. And his game now revolves much more around his serve. He's improved that a lot. So this is a kind of tournament that rewards that a little bit. So maybe that's why. We'll see if he can keep that up in Rome.
He had some good wins. I mean, beating Davidovich Fokina, that
was a huge win.
Yeah, and Fokina's been playing really good.
Yeah, he beat Rune in this tournament, didn't he?
That's a huge win for him too. Yeah.
So great result for Coric. Karen Hashanoff continues to do his thing. Another quarterfinal for him. And he's been a top 10 player, and since
that's so surprising, right?
Since the U.S. Open last year, where he made the semis, and he's continued to make big semifinals, quarterfinals of the biggest events. So it's time to just expect this from him from now on. And he ran into Alcaraz in the quarterfinals. He gave a great showing in that match, actually. So great tournament for him as well. So I think that's a wrap for the men's. Let's move on to the women's. And on the women's side, we had another familiar result in the final, right? So we had the same two players that played the first big tournament on the clay this year for the women in Stuttgart. It was a rematch of that event. It was Iga Swiatek. It was Aryna Sabalenka. But this time, it was Aryna Sabalenka who wins the final. And honestly, I thought that this was probably in the handful of 3 of the best quality matches of the year on the women's side that I've seen, at least. It was that good. They were both playing their best tennis at the same time. And it was great to see because, sometimes, particularly with the clay and the record that Iga has had and the history that Iga has had with Sabalenka on the clay, where she's really dominated her for the most part. Even in a year where Sabalenka won a Grand Slam, they played in Stuttgart and it was a pretty dominant win for Iga. It was actually great to see that Sabalenka was up for the task, right? And she played her absolute best. She was serving big. She was hitting big. Her backhand down the line was explosive. And I actually was almost more impressed with Iga to be able to live with that because Sabalenka has transcended power. Like, she's one of the few women in the on tour that could just take the racket out of your hands no matter what you do, right? When she's on her best day. And sometimes, when we saw Iga lose to Rybakina in Australian Open and in Indian Wells, Iga just looked helpless. Like, she couldn't do anything. She couldn't
figure it out.
Right? She couldn't do anything on defense. It was all just overpowered. And in this match, it was different. Like, Sabalenka was hitting, very hard and trying to go for outright winners. But Iga was sustaining her level. She was able to handle the pace a lot in this match. And she ended up losing, but it was because Sabalenka had to be that good. It wasn't because Swiatek just couldn't, live with it. And the fact that this tournament again is a tournament that really rewards Sabalenka's style of play. The fact that it went to 3 sets, that it was very competitive. There was actually a point in the match. I think every single sort of pattern of score was 3 games in a row. For a certain part of the match, like, somebody went up 3-0, then it got tied at 3, then it ended 6-3, and it kept going like that. It went like that for a while, for like almost 2 sets, I think, or maybe even more. So it was good to see that back and forth. It wasn't just one person completely dominating, and you just knew who was going to win, right? Right to the end, right until Sabalenka was serving for the match, she had to, she needed 4 match points to win the match. She didn't cruise through it, right? So it was good to see that both of them were there. Both of them were giving their best, and they were able to handle each other's best and make it such a competitive match. So I am personally very excited about the fact that we actually have a rivalry in the women, in top of the women's game. Maybe a few rivalries, right? Depending on the surface. Maybe when we move to grass, we're gonna see a little bit more of Rybakina and Sabalenka duking it out on the grass. I mean, Sabalenka's pretty good on grass herself. She just couldn't play Wimbledon last year because of the ban. But then on hard courts, all 3 of them are really good. On any given day, Iga could be the one who wins. It could be Rybakina. Right now, she seems to have the upper hand between them two. Between Rybakina and Sabalenka is a toss-up. We have a pretty good, top 3 group of players that are consistently getting to the end of tournaments and having battles with each other. So what do you think about the final? What do you think about, the state of the top of the women's game?
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, we haven't really, I think women's tennis kind of needed a rivalry.
Yeah.
And I'm actually just very surprised that Sabalenka is up there because I think we mentioned a lot earlier that, I mean, she was not necessarily the most consistent player. I mean, she would get to later stages of tournaments, but it was kind of hard to tell if she was going to come through with the win, right?
Yeah.
But she's been consistently playing very high level tennis and a lot of power tennis too, and that's really interesting to see, especially on clay too.
Yeah.
You don't see like that combo too often.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Iga is been the favorite in clay for the past few years, and I was just shocked that she's only 21.
Just 21, yeah.
Yeah, she's but she I think this particular match was a battle for both of them.
Yeah.
And it could have gone either way.
Yeah.
But Sabalenka came out with the win, and it's a healthy rivalry, I think, right now.
Yeah. I think so too.
And it kind of makes Roland Garros a bit more interesting.
It does.
Even though the surface is going to be different, and Iga definitely plays better there, but it'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like you said, right now this win, honestly, for me, it felt much more important for Sabalenka to show that she can beat Iga on the clay. And even though, like, I think, if you were to ask me, based on this result, does Iga need to adjust anything?
I don't know. Not
nothing.
That much.
I think if she
Madrid, right?
I think exactly. Yeah. This is the thing. This is a different type of tournament, and Iga just beat her in Stuttgart, so there isn't any need for her to panic, right? It's just that on this given day, Sabalenka was just too good, and the conditions were better for her, right?
Sabalenka's game,
right?
Yeah.
So Rome and Roland Garros are very different, and Iga is still the player to beat in those tournaments. So I think in that sense, for Iga, it didn't matter too much that she lost this, but it's really important for Sabalenka that she won it, because even though these are different conditions, just having that belief that I beat her already on clay, I don't care what the conditions were, I beat her on clay, that does give her some more belief, and I think it can give her a chance in Rome and in Roland Garros. Say that it gets very close, right? She could have that experience of, first having won a Grand Slam this year, and second, having beaten Iga on clay, So I think that's really important for her, and I think it's important for the rivalry as well, particularly on this surface. Because otherwise, we could just give every trophy to Iga on the clay, because she's that good. I mean, on the clay, she just moves so much better than everybody else on the clay, and she feels at home on the clay, and that top spin
reminds me of Rafa and Alcaraz.
Yeah, exactly.
Movement.
Exactly. Yeah, she slides into her shots, and she can hit like crazy, angled backhands going opposite in the opposite direction. It's crazy how she can slide into those shots and still get so much power in them.
Someone's a fan.
No, I mean, I'm telling you, she's just great on the clay.
Yeah.
And just to see how Sabalenka put in the work, change her serve, she got that right. You remember last year when we were talking about one of the tournaments where she had like 40 something, like 43 or 44 double faults in 2 matches.
Yeah, it was rough.
That was really rough.
Yeah.
And look at how far she has come by putting in the work in the gym, by getting, a tennis psychologist, to getting also knowing when to stop it, because sometimes, not everything is mental either, right? So, some things are mental, but you also have to recognize when there's a mental barrier and where there's just a plain physical barrier that you need to put in the work in the gym to fix. She did both. She got the help she needed, then she stopped it, then she realized, I just need to, take this off season and just get more fit. And she put in the work, and now she moves so much better than she used to. Like in just 1 year, you can see the difference, right, in her defense, especially on clay. She's obviously not at the level of Iga in terms of movement, but she does have something that Iga doesn't have, and it's that power and that serve, right? So now she has some weapons, and she has her weapons, but some of the weaknesses are covered now. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen in Rome to start, and then depending on what happens in Rome, what happens in Roland Garros. So it's going to be an interesting draw to discuss. So those are the results on the women's side. We have Sabalenka winning her second Madrid. This is her second Madrid title. Iga's still looking for her first, and I think eventually she will win it, but not this year. And some other general discussion points. So we've already talked about the big two, big three sort of narrative on the women's side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I did want to give a shout out for a few players here. Maria Sakkari, she makes a semifinal. She played well for about 20 minutes against Sabalenka, and that just got overmatched. But it's good to see that she's back on track, got to another semifinal of a big event.
Mm-hmm.
We do want to see her win these tournaments at some point. I mean, she seems to always get there and not win them, or she seems to used to do that all the time. And now she's getting back there. But hopefully at some point she'll find a way. But I think this is a good start to getting back to form, with this result. And she has some good wins along the way. So I wanted to give a shout out to her. I think similar comments for Pegula. She makes a deep run in another event as she typically does. But it's getting to the point where, okay, we want to see you take the next step, right? And I don't know if this is a good result. This is a more of the same, so that means that it's not good. I don't know how to sort of at the end sort of come down on, but if you're consistent enough, I think that's still good. She just needs to take that next step, right? And right now she's just not as good as the top players, but she's just below that level, right? And I guess the last player that I wanted to give a quick mention was to Andreeva, who is a very young player, like a 16-year-old, I want to say. And she beat like 3 top 30 players, either 2 or 3 in a row, or maybe 2 of them, and then the other person was Leila Fernandez, who used to be a top 20 player. So really, really good wins from her. And, she eventually ran into Sabalenka, and, she just got overpowered there. Obviously, Sabalenka is probably the best player in the world this year. She's certainly leading the race in that sense. So it was good. It's a good showing from Andreeva. She fell a little short there, but that's a really exciting story. Young player. She also has a sister that plays tennis. So now we have the battle of the sisters, the young sisters, the young prodigy sisters, the Andreevas and the Frubertovas. So we'll see. Right. We'll see which one of them are going to be the best. But that's it for the women's side in Madrid. Anything else that you want to bring up before we sort of move on to other Madrid things?
I think that's about it. I mean, Kudermetova, we should talk about her a little bit. I mean, she had a good tournament also. Some good wins over Pegula and Kazaskina, I think. And Potapova.
Potapova continues to have a really good year.
And that was a tough one there too for Kudermetova.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. I mean, great tournament though.
Yeah, it was a great tournament. I think it's a good shout for Kudermetova. She really needed to get a good event, a good result like this, because she's typically very consistent, but she's been a little bit of a slump recently. So it's good to see that she got some tight wins there, and hopefully that will help her moving forward in the next few tournaments. But yeah, let's move on to the next, or I guess the final Madrid things. So I can't believe we're going to be talking about cake in this podcast, but I feel like we have to because everybody else in the tennis world is. So let's just talk about this cake situation. So for context for people, this is going to sound ridiculous, but there was a big controversy because Carlos Alcaraz's birthday is on, I believe, the 5th of May, and he played a match, probably against Hashanov or Chorich, one of the two. And at the end of the tournament, they had a cake for him, right? They do this every year. I mean, they had it 2 years ago. I remember when I first saw him play Nadal, and he got absolutely destroyed in that match against Nadal. They still brought out a cake for him at the end of the match. So it's something that they do because Alcaraz is Spaniard, right? It's like a nice tradition to have there. Their local star has a birthday at the same time of the event. It's a no-brainer to give him some sort of cake or some sort of event. Now, where the issue comes is that Arena Sabalenka, who's number 2 in the world, just as Alcaraz, right? Grand Slam champion, former Madrid champion. She also has a birthday on the same day, on May 5th. And they gave her a cake that was like super small compared to like the gigantic cake that like 3 layers tall for Alcaraz. And people on Twitter were just having fun with it. And I think where it got a little bit dicey was when Victoria Azarenka, who's another WTA player, she made a tweet and sort of referred to the discrepancy in the size of the cake to reflect sort of the discrepancy of the women's treatment in the Madrid tournament. So it got a bit personal there with the event, right? And you know, it might be true, it might not be true, etc. But the point is that it was a big accusation that came out of like a little, you know, drama or little thing that didn't. To me, it seemed funny, and it seemed obvious that it was not the same, you know, apples to apples comparison. Because again, Alcaraz is the prodigy from Spain, and the local hero, and Sabalenka's just not, right. So, in that sense, if you take that in a vacuum, it looks stupid. And Azarenka looks like she's overreacting. But there is history, right? Madrid is a tournament that typically, you know, specifically, right, this tournament has been called out because they actually do treat the women worse than the men, for sure. Particularly with the pay, you know, I think the equal pay thing, I don't know if it's equal or not. But it is... We're checking the stream to see if we're still live. Give us 1 second with technical difficulties here. Are we good?
Good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So talking about the cake situation. So Madrid has been an event that has treated women usually worse than the men, and there's a lot of history. Just to make it very quick, you know, the tournament used to be owned by a guy who's definitely a misogynist. He's been accused by it for many reasons, but one of them, you know, he actually took the WTA to court so that they could avoid having equal pay for the women, even though the event is a combined event. So he went to those lengths, right? They've traditionally used models for the show court matches. So essentially, you know, it kind of like it's the women are kind of like the entertainment. That's sort of what the message was by putting models in there. And look, this is not something that we've never seen before, right? We see this all the time in boxing. We see this in, you know, the cheerleaders in NFL. It's something that does happen. But the problem is that when all of this, you know, taking all this context together, and Vika's comment, right, Azarenka's comment, what she was trying to get at is, you know, it's not about the cake, it's about the history of treatment. And then what happened was that Feliciano Lopez, who is the tournament director right now, in the Madrid Open, what happened was that he actually responded to the tweet that Vika sent out, right? So what happened there was that he sort of posted a picture of Rune with a birthday cake, because he had a birthday during the event as well, and it was a small cake as well, right? But what they didn't show was that they had actually a big party for him. So he came off as disingenuous with the response that they put out, and the thing that really made it into a huge deal was that the women's final for the doubles, for the women's doubles, had Victoria Azarenka in it, right? They won the tournament, and they did not in the ceremony allow them to have a speech. I don't know if it was retaliation. I don't know if it was because they were worried that Azarenka was going to make some sort of remarks, but they did not allow them to speak in the tournament. So when you take all of the history together, it just doesn't look good for Feliciano and for the tournament, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any thoughts on this. I brought this up to you very late. What is your initial reaction to all of this? I know that this was a mouthful.
Yeah, my initial reaction was, how is Feliciano Lopez going to get any more wild cards that he invents?
Yes. I think those days are gone for Feliciano.
No, also, yeah, this is, I guess, I mean, Madrid has, like you said, has this history on this issue. But this was kind of unacceptable in a way. Like, you should at least let in the finals, let people speak.
Yeah.
And if they're worried about someone talking about this sort of stuff, I mean, they're going to talk in other outlets anyways.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why they would come to that sort of decision there.
Yeah, that's the thing. It only makes them look bad.
It looks even worse. Yeah. But I mean, the cake is kind of ridiculous. If you look at Alcaraz standing next to his cake, and actually, let's put this up on our stream here. But I mean, it is a smaller cake, but it's still pretty decent size.
It's pretty decent.
Yeah.
The cake thing doesn't matter, honestly. And there were some people that got outraged by the cake.
Outraged by the cake. Everyone's just going to push everyone.
For those people, the only thing, and look, you know how much I have defended.
Gate is kind of funny.
Yeah. You know how much I have defended the women's game on this show, right? I am a bit advocate of women's tennis. I think a lot of the time, the arguments against equal pay for women always revolve to the fact that, people want to see men more. People, I don't know, Serena could not beat Nadal. And obviously we know that. They're different sports. There are differences. But the point is, Leonard Struve was playing Aslan Karatsev in a final, and Serena was playing Venus in another final. Guess who's going to get more ratings? It's going to be Serena and Venus, right? It's going to be Sharapova if she's playing. It's going to be Iga if she's playing. Personalities make the sport. Naomi Osaka is probably one of the most rich tennis players, men or women, because of endorsements and all that. Why? Because of her personality and her background, her intersectionality with all of the different, important aspects, right, that she represents. She is like, she's somebody that people want to follow, right? Selling the sport is not only who's better and can men beat women or kind of thing. It is also who's marketable, and those people bring the money for everybody, really. So that's always my argument. The arguments are always about they try to make it about the men bring more money. The big three bring more money, right? They bring more money. Alcaraz brings more money, but nobody cares about Struff or whoever it is in the top 20, 30 that people might not know. So I am a big advocate on that side. But this cake thing, if you're upset about Sabalenka getting a small cake versus Alcaraz getting a big cake, get over it, okay? Get over it. It's not a big deal. What is a big deal is what, Azarenka said, what it represents, not the cake, but what she was trying to say, right? What she was trying to say is, this is just a metaphor of what of the issue. And that issue is real. And Madrid they have the history for it. So
Feliciano kind of fumbled.
He did fumble. And it's not only Feliciano. And I'll be fair to Feliciano. Being a tournament director is tough, right? You have to, there's so many competing interests. You have to juggle a lot of schedules and who's going to come to the events and what matches we put on and all that stuff. It's very difficult. So he is not the only person responsible here. There's more people behind the scenes that also have fault in this. But they definitely fumbled this. And I have to say, the fact that right now, to this point, at least until we started recording, they hadn't put out a statement yet explaining their logic. It doesn't look great, right? It seems like they're trying to figure out what to say rather than, we already know what you think if you're taking this long, right? So it's not good. But I don't want to spend more time talking about this. We addressed it. I think it's horrible what they did. But I'm tired of talking about cakes on this podcast. So let's move on to Rome then. Anything else you want to add before we move on to the next topic?
I mean, we can talk. How's about the prize money for this?
Sure.
Do we know? I mean, we can talk about it right now. There's a big difference, right?
It's still a big difference, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, that's the other thing that happens with this tournament, right? Not all the tournaments are like this.
Put it on the.
What is the difference?
So the winner for the men's side gets 1.1 million euros, and then the women's Madrid. See what they got here. It's actually not written here.
It's not written there.
We'll have to look it up.
Yeah, we'll get. Oh, what's this? What's in the bottom here?
Oh, there it is. 580.
So that's about half, right?
Half.
It used to be worse.
Yeah, it used to be worse.
It used to be worse.
Actually, I think the Italy one is very different.
So Italy is actually worse.
This was
last
or two years
last
ago.
year. 2 years ago.
Yeah, we'll have to look that up again. But yeah, it's still a big difference.
It's a big difference, and yeah, unfortunately, again, all these arguments that come up about who sells more, blah blah blah, right? If the events are the same, people are coming to see all of the matches. I mean, when we went to the U.S. Open, we went to a lot of women's and men's matches, didn't we? Like, we were not choosing. We actually had the most amazing time we had was watching Caroline Garcia.
Oh my gosh!
And that's in those matches,
and
right?
Kvitova.
And then Kvitova with her tie breaks. So, I mean, we see the experience. A lot of the people that go to the events.
Remember
who?
The year before that.
What was the year before that?
Raducanu.
Oh man, yeah. Raducanu was amazing. We got to see her like right in front, right before anybody knew who she was.
Court 17.
So court 17. So we saw her destroy. Who was it? Sorriba Stormo.
Yep.
Yeah, it was 6-1. I'm never gonna forget that match. But one of the biggest highlights. Yeah. These were all women's matches, and a lot of people that go to these events too are casual fans as well. Like a lot of these people don't even know who's playing, and they go for the experience. The entire tournament is a package, an experience, right? So to be as disingenuous as to say that people only care about the men, that's not true. Yes, for sure Serena Williams would never be able to beat Federer or Nadal or Djokovic or even Struff or whatever it is, right? It's not going to happen. We understand that, but that's not the argument. These are two different tours. They have different virtues, right? There might be more just raw power on the men's side in terms of serving, but there's a lot more breaking on the better return of serves in the women's because, you have a little more time to set up and see amazing returns on the women's side. So you see more rallies. So there are different things to enjoy from both tournaments, and not everybody has to like them both, but there can't be this disparity of 10 times less money, right? That's the part that is kind of insane because it costs the same to prepare for all of these events for all the players. So it's a little unfair.
This, for some of the fans that if you're not familiar with some of the differences in the prize money, this was, I guess, half, right? The pay, but in some other tournaments it's much more drastic.
Yeah, sometimes it's 10 times less, sometimes it's 6 times less.
But the Grand Slams have actually done a better job at getting equal pay.
Yes,
especially for those, actually in all four, all of them. Yeah. Yep,
and that's something that if the Grand Slams have led the way to do that, there's no reason why they cannot do it on the men's and both on both tours, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and it is a difficult conversation, right? Because the revenue part of it it is a conversation to be had. It's like the thing with this is certainly not the same thing as NBA and WNBA, for example. That's a whole different argument. That's a whole different sport. They're very different types of products. You can't just apply one opposite onto the other. Tennis is very different. Tennis, women's and men's tennis, comes as a package most of the time in a lot of events. Particularly for these combined events, it should be, as equal as possible. Or at the very least, just not as egregious, right? As long as you're making it less egregious, that's where I kind of start drawing lines, and I'll be like, okay, I'm not going to battle for this. I'm not going to fight for this, little difference, but 10 times less, that's kind of insane. But yeah, anyway, that is the cake gate. That is a little bit of the politics and all of it of tennis. How about we talk about the actual tennis now again? And let's talk about Rome. Let's talk about the ATP and WTA draw previews. And here's what I'm excited about. Let's start with the men's side. For the first time this year, we are going to have Carlos Alcaraz and Novak Djokovic in the same draw. How excited are you about that?
Yeah, I'm stoked. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw last year around this time in Madrid, Alcaraz played Djokovic and Nadal, right? And surprisingly, he won both of them, which is insane.
Yeah.
But this year, we're looking forward to more of those.
Yeah, exactly.
We want more of these matches.
We need to see,
We've seen a lot of Sinner Alcaraz.
Yep.
Which has been great. To be honest with you, I love those matches.
Oh, amazing.
But
amazing stuff.
We do need to see how they go against the all-time greats.
Look, Djokovic is the second best player or the best player in the world this year, right? Or however you want to rank it. We haven't seen him play Alcaraz, and that's a shame. We want to see the best players. Back in the day, the thing that we loved about tennis, when tennis got really, popular and took off, right, was the fact that Nadal and Federer were meeting in the biggest events very consistently. Meeting in the Wimbledon final, meeting in the French Open final, meeting in all the Masters finals all the time, right? That made it so compelling. And right now, we don't have that many more years of Djokovic at the top of the game, and Alcaraz is entering his prime. We want to see that. How do they stack up against each other, right?
Is he entering his prime?
Well...
He may be far away from it, actually.
Everybody else better hope so, because if he's far from his prime, everybody else is in trouble. But yeah,
he's close to it.
I want to see, right now Alcaraz has the best record of the year, right? He's won about 95% of his matches to the year. He's only lost 2 matches. That's it, all year. He's played every single tournament that he's played. He's reached a semifinal or more. Right? Has one semifinal, has a few finals, has a few titles this year. Right? He won in Rio, he won in Indian Wells, Barcelona, Madrid. So he has 4 titles this year. He's clearly the man to beat right now, but we can't definitively say he is the best player in the world because he hasn't played Djokovic yet. And Djokovic is the kind of guy where you don't need to see matches. You know who he is, right? So you give him the benefit of the doubt. So I want to see Alcaraz tested against Djokovic again. We saw it last year. That's where he sort of, that was his breakout party, right? Where he beat Nadal, and then he beat Djokovic in Madrid, and then beat Zverev in the final, who was, I think he was the defending champion that last year. So I want to see more of that. I want to see where he stands.
But
so maybe
one thing. Do you think Djokovic is in that form right now? I mean, looks like he had some injury issues.
It's tough to say. I mean, he had injury concerns, right, going into or I guess coming out of the Banja Luka event, and that was the reason that he didn't actually play in Madrid. So it's hard to know if he's going to be ready, he's going to be fit. But again, this is Djokovic. We've seen this before. We've seen him not play his best, particularly last year on the clay, right? It took him all the way to Madrid, to find his form and particularly in Rome where he won the title. So it could come out of nowhere. It could all click. Today he was actually practicing with Sinner.
I saw that,
so at least he's practicing. He's getting out there. And it'll be interesting to see how far he can get in this tournament. It's hard to say. But
maybe he needs some match wins and then.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, let's see how he looks in the first few rounds, and I think we'll have more information there. But it is a factor for sure. But do we want to go into the?
Let's go into the draw.
Let's go into the draw for the men's. Let's start there.
All right.
And just pulling it up here as well to see my picks.
Number 1 seed. It's Novak Djokovic.
So Novak Djokovic is the Rome defending champion. He is the number 1 seed coming into this tournament. So maybe let's talk about his section of the draw first. First few potential matches, what stands out to me, I think he has a pretty decent section, I would say, at least until the round 16. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, see if Stan the Man can make any noise, but I always am rooting for Stan.
I know. I want him to be back too, but
but I don't know if
his fitness is just not there anymore.
Yeah, it's not.
Like his game, it looks good still, but it's just
Yeah.
his fitness is not there anymore.
I did see he's been working hard. He's been always working hard.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I mean, you know how Stan is. He comes out of nowhere, so he might come out of nowhere and win Rome. Who knows?
Like a Karatsev or
yeah, like a Karatsev, exactly. But yeah, all in all in this section,
yeah, I think he has a good draw actually.
He has a pretty good draw. So the ranked players here are Djokovic, Dimitrov, Diminar, and Norrie up to the quarterfinal stage.
Mm-hmm.
So out of all of those, I think these are players that I think Djokovic matches up pretty well against. So if he's going to play himself into form, this is the kind of draw that he would have wanted to have.
Yeah.
It would have been pretty bad if he would have drawn somebody like, let's see.
Struff.
Yes, like Struff. He's not in this draw. I was trying to find somebody in this draw that might be maybe somebody like who's the guy that beat him in Banja Luka?
His
Dusan Lajovic.
Yeah.
Maybe Dusan Lajovic early would have been bad.
Yeah.
Somebody like that, or somebody like a Clay Quarter. That's very proven. Although there's a lot of seeds in here, so I think some of the best Clay Quarters are ranked. But looks good so far for Djokovic, I think, in that first little section. For the quarterfinal, though, some potential opponents that he could have there that are seeded. So Felix Auger-Aliassime and Holger Rune are the top seeds that could fill in that other quarterfinal spot. And the other seeds here are Mirmir Kecmanovic and Sebastian Korda. And I think all of those could be dangerous in a quarterfinal for him.
Dangerous.
Depending on his fitness, right?
Korda, Rune is going to be tough.
Rune would be the toughest, right? Yeah. Korda had match points against Djokovic this year, earlier in Adelaide. So if he can find his form again, he's coming back from injury, so he's not 100% yet. But if he can find his form, he can be dangerous. Obviously, Holger Rune, we know what he does. Mm-hmm. He beat Djokovic in Paris already last year. And we've already seen what he can do on the clay. So that could be tough for him. Any other standouts from this section that are unseeded? I think those are probably the most important ones. The unseeded ones. I think so. I don't trust any of them. Murray just had a pretty good result in the Challenger event.
Tournament.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You think that'll help him in this tournament?
I think he runs on confidence a lot of the time.
So his second round match could be Kecmanovic.
That would be good, actually.
Do we think he beats Kecmanovic?
Kecmanovic is pretty good on clay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
I don't think he wins that, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe he brings some confidence.
Yeah.
And it can go a little bit farther. But I think in this section, I think most of the seeds should make it to their.
Well, Fognini might be interesting with that first round match.
True. Yeah, Fognini, he's just not very good anymore on,
I know, but
on singles.
Murray, yeah.
But it could be interesting. I mean, he's good on clay, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe let's talk about the other section there. The top seeds are Casper Ruud.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be real. This section belongs to Jannik Sinner, who is the number 8 seed. And
home soil.
And this tournament, I was reading earlier today that Rome has not had a local winner in a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So it'll be interesting to see what kind of pressure that's gonna be for Sinner.
There's no Berrettini either.
There's no Berrettini. He's been injured. So Sinner is basically carrying the load there, because I don't think Fognini's gonna do much. So let's talk about Sinner's little section here. So Sinner could be drawn against in the quarterfinal. He could be drawn against. Is there a lucky loser here, or no? Before the quarterfinal, sorry, it would be Hashanov, right? So Hashanov, Cerundolo, and Griekspoor are the seeded players in this section. Any danger there for Sinner, you think, or you think this is a pretty good draw for him?
Well, I mean, Griekspoor is pretty good. Cerundolo. Yeah. I think he can handle them, though. If he's playing the way he was before Madrid, I mean, yeah, I'm pretty confident in his abilities right now.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I guess one shout out here is maybe Sebastian Baez could be a little tricky because he's pretty good on clay, but again, I don't think he has enough to beat a guy like Sinner. What about Ruud's section? What do we think about his draw, at least up to the quarterfinal? So he's in the section there with Ben Shelton, Baltic van de Zandschulp, and Tommy Paul.
Right. I think
in terms of seeds.
Yeah. Well, Tommy Paul just got to the finals of that event with Murray, right?
Yeah.
So
challenger though, but
yeah, gives him a little momentum, right?
Yeah. Tommy Paul in general has not been great on clay this season.
Yeah, so I don't know actually. I mean, if Ruud's not been playing well either, so it's kind of a crapshoot. We'll see. I mean, Ruud, I expect Ruud to come out of that. We'll see if he can do it.
I think that for me the most
could even,
yeah. I think the most dangerous player for me in this section is Garin. He's played well already this season on the clay. He's a very good clay court player. Used to be ranked in the top 20.
That's right.
So if anybody to me is a threat in this section, would be him to make that quarterfinal. If we believe that Ruud is not going to find his form. Now, it is important to mention that last year, Casper Ruud was pretty bad in the first 3 clay events of the year in Barcelona, Monte Carlo, and in Madrid. But he did make the semifinals in Rome. That's where his sort of run started. And then he ended up making the final in the French. So maybe this could be, again, the tournament where he finds his form. Now, the one difference that I would say is that he was actually pretty good before the clay season last year, right? He made the final in Miami against Alcaraz. He actually got pretty far in Indian Wells too. So he had better form coming into the clay season, had a little bit of a dip, and got back his form in Rome. This year, he's just been playing awful the entire year, except for that one tournament that he won. So definitely I have less trust in him to find his form here, but it is important to mention that this is where he did find his form last year on the clay. So anything could happen. Maybe this is where he finds his rhythm, but we shall see. Honestly, I think he got a pretty decent draw in the first few rounds. He could have drawn a lot worse draw before that. So, so that's the top section there. Let's go to Alcaraz's section. And let's start with Alcaraz, actually. So we'll start with the bottom portion there where Alcaraz is in the same quarter as Stefanos Tsitsipas. And that's just very bad news for Stefanos Tsitsipas. Very good news for Alcaraz, I would say. Because
Drop City.
Tsitsipas does not match well against Alcaraz. He's 0-4 against him in his career. And he's playing worse this year, I feel like. And Alcaraz is much better this year. So I don't see that being very good for him. Apart from that, in the quarterfinal in the sort of quarter section there of Alcaraz, the seeds that he would face before the quarterfinal potentially could be either Jiri Lehečka, Dan Evans, and Borna Coric. I would call that a very good draw for Carlos Alcaraz, honestly. I would expect that at some point a guy who's won so many tournaments like this in a row, at some point run out of steam a little bit. So if I were to pick a tournament where maybe he dips a little, would be this one. But with this draw, like, he can almost sleepwalk to the quarterfinal.
This
right?
Is practice sessions right now.
This feels like a really, really great draw for him. There are a few good clay court players in this section, as we should mention. There's Ramos Vignolas, who, he had match points against Alcaraz in the French Open last year. He could be a potential second round opponent. There's Carbales Baena and Thiago Monteiro. Both are great clay court players as well. But honestly, none of those seem to be in any condition to challenge Alcaraz at the moment. So these could be names that you could see, maybe escape up to facing Alcaraz, maybe beating some of the other seeds. But I think in general it's a pretty good draw for him.
Yeah.
And then the Tsitsipas section, the seeds there are Tsitsipas, Nishioka, Lorenzo Musetti, and Francis Tiafoe. What do you think about that for Tsitsipas? Does he get out of the section or somebody else?
It's a pretty good draw too. I mean, I don't know how well is Tiafoe playing in clay. I mean, he's okay. Yeah, I expect him to actually get through. Tsitsipas to get through this.
Yeah,
quarter.
I think where it could get dicey is with Musetti.
Maybe. Yeah, who knows? I think he's fine.
Yeah.
I think he's fine.
Okay, so that's Tsitsipas section. Any other players? I guess Lauvish, you said, right? That could be a second round opponent for Tsitsipas.
Yeah, that might be tricky.
Tricky.
Because he did really well against Djokovic.
Yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, he also was doing okay in Madrid. It was just that he ran into Struff, who had the tournament of his life.
You're right.
So
he did run into Struff.
So it's not like his form dipped. That's something that we should mention.
Yeah. So maybe, that could be a really tricky match.
That could be a tricky one.
If he gets through that, then maybe things get easier for Tsitsipas until he meets Alcaraz, which...
Game over.
I like how we're so confident on this, and then Struff came in last tournament and just busted our bracket.
Just watch Guido Sepeti come through this entire section. No, that's not happening.
That's not. He's a wild card.
No. But yeah, top section here of the bottom half. Top seeds.
You have to pick a lucky loser, actually. That should be
true. Yeah, the problem with these draws is that it takes a little while for the qualifiers to get into the main draw, like to get posted.
Yeah.
Actually, in the women's, which is very annoying, is that if you're doing, and listeners at home, if you're also doing the fantasy, right, we have the qualifying event overlapping with the first round of the women's.
Yeah.
So you have to like random like blank qualifier spots.
Or or you can't. Yeah, you just have to pick
a random thing, right, or an empty spot. So that is annoying. And it would be sometimes, qualifying could tell you something about their potential, like where they land, what could be the seeds that they could upset. It could change everything in terms of how you predict things. But unfortunately, we don't have all that information. But in this section, we have top seeds are Daniil Medvedev and Andrei Rublev. And I think that is a pretty good result for Rublev, actually. Because Medvedev, I mean, he's good. He's shown better improvement on the clay, but he's clearly not as comfortable on the clay, for sure. So I don't think that's going to change in this tournament. Anything that stands out? Maybe let's talk about Medvedev section. This little quarter section there with Hurkacz, Zverev, and Zapata Miralles.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a little difficult for him. Actually,
yeah, right.
Because Zverev is on the rise.
Yeah.
And he is great on the surface. So.
Yeah. Former champion as well in this event. So he probably could be the one that comes out of here. I think that's probably the best news for Zverev that he's landed in the same section as Medvedev. Though they did have that match in Monte Carlo.
Oh, that's right.
And it was stressful for Zverev. So I'm actually looking forward to that. Hopefully it happens to see some more drama. On the court. But yeah, anybody else that maybe stands out in this section of the unseeded players? I think one of the most dangerous ones might be Emil Rusevori. And he actually might be a second round opponent to Medvedev.
Wow.
So that could be somebody to look out. He actually came very close to beating Alcaraz in the first round in Madrid, or in the second round, I guess, because Alcaraz had a bye. So he is somebody interesting to watch. Though he plays a lot like Sinner, and Sinner struggles with Medvedev, so not sure. But this is clay, so it is different. So he could be somebody to watch in this section. Just keep an eye on him. And then top section there with Rublev, we have the seeds are Davidovich Fokina, we have Roberto Bautista Agut, and we have Taylor Fritz.
Yeah, I think this is a tough draw.
This is a tough section. All of those guys I could see getting out of there.
Yeah.
And that's not even mentioning some of the unseeded players like Jerry, who's played pretty well on the clay this year. Now, granted, in the more recent events, he hasn't been that good, but he did great stuff in the South American clay. So it'll be interesting to see if he can do anything there. Yeah, so it's going to be tough. I think this is going to be the section that's more unpredictable, I think, because I can see any of those guys moving forward. So maybe with that, how about we do some predictions?
Let's do it.
Do you want to start or want me to start?
Yeah, why don't you try? Go ahead and start.
Okay. So I'll start with the top section. We have the Djokovic section with Rune. I do have both seeds holding. So I do have a quarterfinal match of Djokovic against Holger Rune.
Nice.
On the bottom section, I do have Sinner holding seed. The upset that I do have here, though, is Ruud not making the quarterfinal. I think he does make the round of 16, but I think he loses to Garin.
Okay.
So I have Garin and Sinner in the quarterfinal there. I'm just going to do this complete section, and then I'll go to the other.
Sounds good.
So I have Djokovic against Rune, Garin against Sinner. I have Rune beating Djokovic on the basis that Djokovic is not 100% healthy, plus the fact that Rune does have game on clay and has confidence to beat a player like Djokovic. Yeah. I think it's all of those ingredients together, I think, will make it possible for an upset. So I went with Rune. And I actually do have a rematch of the semifinal in Monte Carlo between Rune and Jannik Sinner. So I'll have Sinner winning that match and going into the final. So I have Sinner on the top half. On the bottom half, quarterfinal matchup. So like I said, I think, this is the kind of tournament where I would predict maybe a little bit of a dip for a player like Alcaraz in this position, winning so much. Though he does have a pretty great draw, so I just couldn't see how he would lose to anybody there. So I ended up picking him to make the quarterfinal against Musetti. I have Musetti beating Tsitsipas in the round of 16. And I have Rublev holding seed to reach the quarterfinal against Alexander Zverev. I actually have Ruusuvuori beating Medvedev, and then Zverev beating Ruusuvuori to make the quarterfinal. So Rublev against Zverev, Musetti against Alcaraz. I got Zverev beating Rublev to make the semis, and I got Alcaraz beating Musetti to make the final. So I have a final of Jannik Sinner on home soil against the sensation of the moment, Carlos Alcaraz. And I have Jannik Sinner winning his first Masters 1000 title.
At home.
I think it's going to be great. I think he's ready. We've seen him too much getting to semifinals, getting to finals. It's time for him to win a big event. I think he has it in him. I think he's going to do it. I think he's
I'd be so happy.
Yeah.
I've been rooting for him for a long time.
I know. I want to see him win one of these tournaments. Yeah. Come on. So that's me. How about you?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, I am gonna pick. We'll start from the top. So Djokovic, number 1 seed. I have him also playing Holger Rune. I think those are probably the 2 best players in that quarter.
Definitely.
And then let's go down here. This one's kind of a crapshoot. I also think Sinner is gonna go into the quarters. However, I have no clue who's gonna play against. I'm just gonna go ahead and pick Casper Ruud. If he can actually build a momentum, I think it'll be a decent match.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. And then in the bottom half, top quarter, we'll have. I'm gonna pick Taylor Fritz and Zverev coming out for that. So, and then all the way in the bottom, I think this is a tough one actually, but we'll just go with Tsitsipas and Alcaraz.
Okay.
That. I can't think of who could beat, Alcaraz at that moment. Or, I mean, Tsitsipas could lose to other people too. But
I think definitely Tsitsipas is more vulnerable there, but
he's definitely more vulnerable. But I don't see the other players.
You just don't trust Musetti.
I don't trust Musetti.
On clay, he's quite good.
I know, but the way Alcaraz, we were watching some highlights before this, and Alcaraz was just punishing Musetti.
I had to remind you, Musetti won that match.
Which is so sad, because he shouldn't have lost.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, so going into the semis, I have Alcaraz beating Tsitsipas, and I'm going to actually go with Zverev.
Wait, Zverev? Okay, Zverev in the final? Oh, in the
semifinal. So Zverev, Alcaraz for the semifinal. And then also Sinner for the semis. He beats Ruud. And I'm going to have Rune over there beating Djokovic. And that, if that happens, I think, I haven't seen much of Djokovic, so it's hard to tell.
Yeah.
It's always hard to tell, but
we'll see him play one match and regret our picks immediately.
Probably. Maybe. Let's see. If Rune is in the form that he has been in, it's going to be hard to beat him. He's been playing really well.
He could win this whole thing.
Yeah, he could. So, I would say a tight nail biter with Rune and Sinner, and I hope Sinner wins.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be great if he does. And then in the bottom half, let's see.
Zverev against Alcaraz.
Zverev. And right now, it's going to be disappointing again. I can't go for Zverev because he's already defeated himself after the comments he said the last time he played against Alcaraz.
He just got so destroyed in Madrid. It's hard to see him winning.
Mentally, physically, everything. Yeah.
To be fair, though, last year he got destroyed in Madrid, and then he went and beat him in Roland Garros. So maybe he can turn it around.
If he's,
but that was before injury, though.
Yeah, that's it. Healthy, he has to be healthy. Yeah, Alcaraz Sinner final, and this is a coin toss. I'm gonna go with Sinner too. Yeah, I'm gonna be. We're not gonna go against each other this time. If we get our predictions right, then
I gotta say, if Alcaraz wins this again, like, come on.
I would. If I had money on this, I would pick Alcaraz.
Yeah, probably me too. Honestly, look, tennis is very unpredictable. Yeah. Sometimes things happen, you don't expect them, and it's very difficult to see the same player win so many tournaments in a row. I mean, we saw Alcaraz the way he won Indian Wells. Who would have thought that he could have even lose like a set in Miami, right? And it happened, right? He lost to Sinner there. It's tough to win 2 tournaments in a row that are of this magnitude. We've seen Nadal do it a bunch of times because that's Nadal, right? We've seen Federer do it. That's Federer. We talk about Alcaraz in the same breath, and deservedly so, right, in terms of his potential. But I just think it's tough, and I also am expecting Sinner to get to that level, to finally win this kind of match, to finally beat a few top players in a row in the same tournament.
I think he can do it.
And I think this year, his progress, he showed he could do it. So I'm going to bet on him.
I'll be so happy. If
Maybe he'll feed on the crowd like Alcaraz did in Madrid.
Yeah.
And hopefully that can help him. But we shall see. It's going to be fun.
See.
I do hope that if we don't get Sinner Alcaraz, I absolutely want to get Djokovic and Alcaraz.
Mm-hmm.
Even Rune against Alcaraz would be amazing.
Those are all very possible.
Yeah. So how about we do the women?
Let's do it.
So let's start with Iga's section. She is the top seed here. Maybe let's just I'll mention really quickly the top seeds. So probably should have done this in the men's too.
Yeah, we didn't do that.
So in the women's, the top 8 seeds are going to be Iga Swiatek, Arina Sabalenka, Jessica Pegula, Ons Jabeur, Caroline Garcia, Coco Gauff, Elena Rybakina, and Daria Kasatkina. You think Garcia is going to be good in this tournament?
I hope so.
I've been waiting for her to have another breakout event this year.
Yeah.
She hasn't been playing bad. I mean, she's still playing top 15 tennis. She's just not playing top 5 tennis like she was last year. So hopefully she can.
Do you think her game fits this type of service? I mean, she's very attack oriented, but
honestly, I don't think it does.
Yeah, I haven't seen her movement too much.
I mean,
on
she's clearly won on clay because she beat Iga in her home tournament. Right. It was on clay last year.
That was last year.
But
last year she was playing really well too.
The thing is, so I looked up her stats, and she's one of the best servers in the women's game. Like she still is. Yeah, she still holds. I think even this year she's in the top 3 players that hold serve, but she can't break serve at all. Like she's just not able to get into these matches for some reason. And I just think that the thing that we actually love about her return attack style is actually detrimental because she can't just use it against everybody. You have to be able to change, depending on who you're playing. I remember when she lost to Ons Jabeur again in the U.S. Open semifinals. She just kept getting beat every single time because Jabeur was just hitting, instead of hitting it hard, she was taking speed off and just hitting the corners. And she could not reach them because she was playing so in front to return, right? So I just think she needs to do something to adjust to that and be a little bit more creative on return, not do the same thing over and over again. Even, that got her to where she is, but if she wants to get to the next level, she has to try to adjust, I think. But we'll see. But yeah, that rounds out the top 8. So maybe let's go to Iga's section. The seeds here, so the quarter that she's in, she would be, interestingly, with Elena Rybakina. That would be a potential quarterfinal.
Boy. The
question is, though, is Rybakina going to make it? Because she has not been playing really well on the clay. Looks like she's a little hurt as well. She's not 100% fit.
No, what happened?
I don't know. She just, I think she retired from a match. Where was it? Was it in Stuttgart? It was either in Stuttgart or in Madrid itself that she had to pull out with some sort of injury. So I don't know what's exactly going on with her, but it looks like she's not 100% fit. And she's on the clay. It's not her best surface. Although, interestingly, she does have a good career record on clay. But, since she became a top player, obviously her best surfaces are hard and grass. So it'll be interesting to see. But yeah, that is the potential quarterfinal matchup. In each of those sort of quarters, the seeds with Iga would be Bernarda Pera, Donna Vekic, and Ludmila Samsonova. I honestly think this is a pretty great draw for her. None of these players seem that dangerous, but honestly, nobody seems dangerous for Iga on this surface. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter who's in this section, to be honest. So I do think she's gonna just easily make that quarter. So maybe let's instead talk about the other sort of quarter, right, where we have Zachary, Bianca Andreescu's back, and Elise Mertens and Elena Rybakina. Those are the seeds. I think here anything could happen, honestly. We saw Zachary make the semifinal in Madrid, right? So she could have a pretty good event again, but Andreescu's capable of beating her, I think. And it depends on if she's healthy, right? I'm honestly actually surprised to see her ranked so high. She hasn't played that much.
Huh?
But I do think that could be a potential upset as well. So this section seems a bit open, and I wouldn't be surprised if Andreescu makes it. I wouldn't even be surprised if some of the unranked players make it here. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But in the other section, on the bottom, we have Ons Jabeur and Daria Kasatkina as the top seeds. And honestly, this seems like a section that could be an opportunity for someone because Jabeur is hurt, and I don't really know how healthy she's going to be in this tournament.
She had it did not look like a good injury.
Yeah.
It's a calf injury.
Yeah. So, and that, that hampers movement, and clay, you want to be able to move.
Yeah,
so,
she relies a lot on it, too.
Yeah. So, that is tough for her. And honestly, that first match that she could play, it could be against Paula Badosa. So,
tough.
And Badosa's been playing really good. She's finding her form again. She's finding her confidence again. So, I think that is a really bad draw for Jabeur, and I doubt that she makes it past that match. Other players that are here are Trevisan, right? We have Alexandrova, who we saw play really well in Madrid and took a set off Iga. We have Barbora Krejcikova, Jelena Ostapenko, and Jill Teichmann in that sort of quarter. So I think this is a pretty open section here for either some of the other seeds to get through, or potentially some of the unseeded players that might be surprises to get through here. This is probably the section with most opportunity, I would say. I'll be interested to see if Jill Teichmann can play a little bit better. She's really good on clay, but she hasn't been a factor at all this year. And last year she actually did well on the clay. So we'll see if she can do better, because she's defending quite a bit of points on this clay court season. She might fall pretty far if she doesn't do well. But that's that top section here. Let's do the bottom section, the section with Aryna Sabalenka. And maybe let's start with Sabalenka's side. Here in the Sabalenka quarter, we have Caroline Garcia as the 5th seed and the player that could face her in the quarterfinals. So that would be an amazing match if it happens. Some of the other players that we have here that are ranked are Petra Martic, Magda Linette, Beatriz Radmaya, Victoria Azarenka, Madison Keys, and Kalinina. So of those players, honestly, probably Linette could be a tricky one. She beat Jabeur last year in Roland Garros. She's had a good year this year. But a lot of these players don't seem like the best clay court players. So maybe I'm looking for somebody outside of the seeds to get out of this section, or potentially Garcia holding her side of things. So it'll be interesting. One of the players that I am circling here is Linda Noskova. She's also a prodigy from the Czech Republic. It seems like they have thousands of them. Frubertova is actually in the same section there. And she's also pretty much, touted as the next prodigy. I don't know how good they're actually going to be, but Noskova has actually been good already. She's had some pretty interesting results so far. So she could be somebody to watch as a potential surprise from this side. I think we should also give a shout out to Sloane Stephens in this section. She just won a challenger event, so she might come into a little bit of form and could be a little bit dangerous in this section. But apart from that, I think, in Sabalenka's side, I don't think we have to look too much, because she's definitely the person to beat in this side. So maybe with that, we can go into some predictions.
Yeah, let's do it.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, so let's start with Iga's side. I have two players. Well, I guess one player only holding seed. That is Iga. I have Iga making the quarterfinal pretty easily to face Zachary, actually. I have Zachary beating Rybakina in the previous round. So I think we'll have a Zachary-Iga quarterfinal. I think Badosa is going to come out of that section of Ons Jabeur. I think Jabeur is probably not going to be ready to play, high level again. So I'm going to give Badosa the nod to make the quarterfinal. I'm going to pick Krejcikova on the bottom side there to also make the quarterfinal, coming out of the Kasakina section. So I have Badosa against Krejcikova and Iga against Zachary. I got Iga and Krejcikova winning their quarterfinal matches. So we have a rematch there from one of the finals of the 1,000 events that Krejcikova won. This time I do have Iga taking revenge. Though I do have to say that Krejcikova is actually very good on clay. She's won the French Open before, so that could be a good match. But I do have Iga making the final. On the other side, we have, let's see. Yeah. So we have in the quarterfinal here, in the section of Coco Gauff. I don't have Coco Gauff making that section.
Surprise.
Yeah, I just don't trust her right now. Her forehand is a big liability at the moment. So I'm going to actually go with Potapova, who's been having a good year and continues to impress. So I think she's going to make that quarterfinal. On the other section there, I do have Pegula holding seed. There's a few dangerous players in this section, and Pliskova, for example, could be dangerous. Quinningen could be dangerous, but I think in the end, Pegula is consistent as she's always holding her seed. So I will go with that. On the bottom, I don't have to talk too much about the Sabalenka section. I'm just gonna go with her because she's just better than everybody right now, not named Iga. And I have her making that quarterfinal. On the Garcia side, though, I do have a surprise. I think Linda Noskova makes the quarterfinal. I think she could be a surprise player. So I have her playing Sabalenka. I do have Sabalenka, though, making the semifinal. I have Potapova beating Pegula. They've actually played 2 classics already this year. Pegula won both of them, but this time I think Potapova is ready to win that match. So I got Potapova and Sabalenka, and I will pick Sabalenka to make the final again.
With
so
Iga.
I got Iga and Sabalenka round 3 this year on the clay.
This is becoming a rivalry.
It's hard to not go with them because they just seem way better than everybody else at the moment on the clay.
Yeah.
This is a different event, though. This is Rome. This is Iga's territory. She is the defending champion, and I do think that she defends her title once more.
Ooh.
So I got Iga winning the title.
2 out of 3.
2 out of 3 this year.
Clay. Yeah.
And 3 in a row in Rome.
Oof. Sounds good.
Yeah. How about you?
All right. Well, it's funny because I was looking through my predictions, and they're very similar.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Which is a bit surprising, except for a few notable ones. Okay, I'll start from the top here. So I have, well, mine got a little busted already. So I had Iga playing Zachary, but I actually had Iga playing Leylah Fernandez to win and then to get there.
Oh yeah, I also had Leylah.
Leylah.
I got Leylah pretty far, and
Leylah just
she already lost
first round. But yeah, I actually had Zachary beating Rybakina the round before, and we'll go down to the other quarter. I also had Krejcikova there, but I had Alexandrova beating Badosa the round before. So I have Alexandrova.
You like what you saw in Madrid, huh, from Alexandrova?
Yeah, I think she's good.
Yeah.
And then in the bottom, I have Potapova beating Coco Gauff also.
Okay.
And Jessica Pegula beating Pliskova.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, very similar there.
Yeah.
And then in the bottom, I actually have Caroline Garcia playing Sabalenka.
Mm-hmm.
And into the semis, I actually have Caroline Garcia beating Sabalenka. So that'll be interesting. I don't know if that's going to come true, but. And also Potapova beating Pegula.
Okay. Yeah. So similar to me.
Similar. And on the top, I have Iga beating Sakari and Alexandrova beating Krejcikova.
Oh.
So
Alexandrova, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
So
you gonna beat Iga too?
No, Iga gets to the final.
Okay.
Caroline Garcia gets to the final also. So,
who wins?
That's the drum roll. That's where my draw ends. I can't remember. Let's see. Let's see as a bracket. Did I not pick a winner? Let's see. Oh, Iga.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's tough to not pick Iga in this tournament. She's the queen, so much better right now than everybody on clay, and Sabalenka's the only one who can challenge her, clearly. So, yeah, I think those are reasonable picks. I'm actually surprised about Caroline Garcia beating Sabalenka, but hey, maybe you're gonna be laughing at me at the end of this event.
We'll find out.
We'll find out about it. But yeah, that is Rome. Anything else before we move on to the final part of our podcast?
No, I think
we're good. Yeah,
we're good.
Just that I'm super excited to see this tournament, and I really do hope that if we don't get the final on the men's side that we both predicted, and Sinner and Alcaraz, please Djokovic and Alcaraz, please happen. I just want to see that once before Djokovic gets too old. So I do want to see that happen. But let's move on to the next stuff. So we do have a bunch of other topics that we want to discuss at some point, but right now it's getting too late. So we will just mention them and we'll talk about them later on. We have in our dockets to discuss the Hawkeye topic, right? We talked about last week that there's going to be a change in the ATP events. Yeah, maybe last time I wasn't clear. I just want to make sure that I'm clear about what happened. Just the ATP level events are going to be affected by this, not the WTA and not the Grand Slams. So just the ATP level events. But it's going to be uniform throughout all of those. But we had talked about, how this affect, chair umpiring, blah, blah, blah in the future. I found some articles about it, but we can talk about it and discuss it later when we have more time. Similarly with the Simona Halep update, there are some things that came out recently, but, we'll table it. We'll talk about it when we have a little bit more time to do so. We talked about the Challenger events wins for Murray and Sloane Stephens, so that's good. And the other shout out that I want to give is to in our fantasy league, we had one of the users, Johannes D, won the WTA bracket. So congrats to Johannes D, and thanks for participating in the fantasy league. If you want to, listeners, if you want to participate in the fantasy league, we will have a link on our show notes from our audio feed, where you can find how to log into the league itself and what the code is to participate. We essentially go through and make predictions, just like we went through in the podcast, to sort of talk about the who's gonna win in each event that we discuss. So it's a fun way to see who can get it right, who can get bragging rights. So if you can join, please do so. So congrats again to Johannes D for winning the WTA side of things. And then you and I actually tied in first place for the ATP side of things in Madrid. So we'll see how we do in Rome. Final thing, let's do some quick trivia. We're going to put Jish on the spot.
Oh, boy.
One more time. We're gonna cover. I like to be. I want to be fair with both the ATP and the WTA, but we'll see if we have enough time to do both. We'll start with the ATP side of things. The question that I have is, there have been two very consistent winners of this event. Let's just say in the last 20 years or so. But since 2000, right, there has been a total of 9 men winners. For the Rome event. Can you name 5 of those players? So 9 men have won the event in Rome since 2000. Can you name 5 of those events? And by the way, just wanted to acknowledge we had some technical difficulties with the camera, but we're back here.
Yeah, we're back.
So thank Jish for doing that work behind the scenes. So can you name 5 of those players, Jish?
5 players. Nadal.
Absolutely. Bonus question. Do you know how many times he's won it?
Well, is it in the double digits? Oh, God. As usual. I'm just going to go with 10 because
10, exactly 10.
Ridiculous
Yeah.
if it's over. Because he has already won Monte Carlo more than 10.
Yeah. Barcelona
and
more than 10.
Roland Garros more than 10.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. So, how many more does that leave for other people?
I know, right? That's why there's only 9 since 2000.
So Federer never won this one. No, he won this one. Federer.
Is that your answer?
Federer won this one.
Okay, let me give you strikes, right? You got 5 guys that you got to guess. And I'll give you 3 strikes.
Okay.
So, Federer, yes or no?
Yes.
Strike 1.
Okay.
He has not won it. He's played in 4 finals, but he has not won it.
Darn. So he's missing a lot, isn't he? He's missing Monte
just
Carlo?
these 2 events, Monte
Monte
Carlo.
Carlo
He's won
and
Madrid
Rome.
a few times.
Yeah. Okay,
but
I thought it was just Monte Carlo. Okay.
Yeah, it's Monte Carlo.
And
He's made the
Rome.
final of both. He just haven't been able to win it.
Oh, Stan.
Stan, the man.
And then that other guy.
Yep.
Let's say Djokovic.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Another bonus question. How many times has Djokovic won it?
He does speak Italian, doesn't he?
He does speak Italian.
I'm going to say 3.
Higher.
4.
Higher.
6.
6.
Wow.
He's won 6
That's
times.
impressive.
Yeah. And I think he's beat Nadal a few times
Oh my
in finals
gosh.
here. Let's see. He's beaten at least once. Yeah. Twice, Nadal. Crazy stuff. Okay, you got 2
2.
and just 1 strike.
Since 2000.
Since 2000.
2000.
There's 9 options. You just need 5.
2000. So I'm going to say... I'll say Juan Carlos Ferrero.
Yes. That's 3.
Okay. Can
you guess what year he won it?
Probably like 2001.
2001 exactly.
That was his hot year. Yeah.
Who did he beat in the final?
Oh gosh.
Pushing it.
I don't know, like Korea.
No. Did you remember this match or no? At all. It's been a long time.
Yeah, no. Who did
He beat
play?
Guga.
Oh,
And it was a
poor
5-setter.
Guga. Oh, back in the day.
Back in the day when we have 5-setters in the finals.
Guga. Okay, so I'm gonna say Guga wins. No, he was old then. By that time, probably. Okay, Guga.
Guga?
No. Oh.
2 strikes, so think carefully on the
no.
next ones.
Oh,
You got
God.
2 more correct answers that you're missing, right? But you have 7
answers.
options. No, 6 options. 6 more options.
options. Oh gosh.
You just gotta get 2 more.
Mm.
Let me know if you want hints. You got 1 more strike left, so if you want hints.
Yeah, I'll need a hint now.
Okay. I'll give you one, hopefully an easy one. I did already mention in this podcast.
No, that's not gonna be helpful.
What? I already mentioned in this podcast that he was a former winner. One of these guys. Oh, gosh,
yeah. Let's see. What time is it again? Let's see. Is it Zverev?
Alexander Zverev is the former champion. Okay. You got 4. You just got one more left.
One more.
And you got 5 options.
5 options.
But you also only have 1 strike left.
Yeah. Wow. Sudden death here, huh?
You want some more hints?
I'll take one. No
I'll give you 2 for 2 different guys. Give you 2 for 2 different guys. First one. We actually talked about this guy today. Maybe not on the podcast, but we talked about him today as a former champion in this event. The other hint. How do I say this without super spoiling it?
Is it a current player?
Okay, I'll give you that hint. There's 1, 2... Of the people that you're missing, there's 1 that is a current player. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are retired players.
How does that really help me?
Well, now you know like what the distribution is.
Okay. Oof.
I can give you another hint.
Okay. Yeah, I think a different hint would be great.
Okay, a few of these players, I'll give you for a few of them, are former world number 1s.
Ooh, that's good.
And multiple Grand Slam champions.
Interesting.
It's still kind of generic, but...
It's not Andy Roddick.
It's not Andy Roddick. I'll agree with you there.
Former number 1s? Oof. There's not a lot of number 1s.
There's actually 3 of the 2. One of them I'm actually not sure if he was ever number 1 or not. But there's 3 of them that I know for a fact that were number 1s.
Okay.
One of them is current player. It's a pretty easy one.
Alcaraz did not win last
No, he didn't. He hasn't. Alcaraz is going to debut in this tournament.
Yeah.
This event, so no, not Alcaraz.
Oh.
Former number 1s.
Was Murray ever number 1?
Andy Murray. He
was number 1, right?
Yeah, he was like for 50 weeks or something like that.
Oh. I always think of him as a number 2 or number 3.
The eternal number 2, 3, 4 player. Yeah, Andy Murray, that's correct.
Yeah.
The other players are...
Too bad he might lose first round.
He probably will. Or at the very least second round. The other players are Andre Agassi.
Oh, man. I was actually going to pick Andre.
Yeah. Carlos Moya.
Former Nadal.
Exactly. Magnus Norman. And Felix Mantilla. Remember that we talked about that earlier today?
Yeah.
That he was like, who is this guy? They beat Federer, exactly. Fun fact. He beat Federer in that final.
And he won it, yeah.
Yeah. So, biggest win of his career. But I did look him up, and he seemed to be like a Pablo Carreño Busta type player back in the day. He was pretty consistent, playing well in smaller events, not so well in Grand Slams.
I see.
But yeah, that is the trivia for the men. I don't think we have that much time to do the women, so how about we save it for the results of Rome? We'll do it then. But before we end, just a quick preview of our next show. So in the next 2 weeks, we're going to have Rome. So we're not going to record an episode for next week. We'll record the following week. We'll see you then. And we're going to recap Rome and maybe provide a bit of a state of play as things go into Roland Garros. So when the hardcore season sort of finished before the clay court started now, we did a little bit of a power rankings type situation going into into the clay. So maybe we'll do something similar to see where
Roland
people
Garros.
stand going into Roland Garros.
I like
How's that?
Let's do it.
Okay, so we'll do that. Do you want to close us out, telling
Let's do it.
people where to find us?
Yeah. So if you liked what you hear, please subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. So that we can receive so that you can receive all the new episodes as they come live. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and most other major podcasting platforms. So leave us a rating. We'd really appreciate it, and a review. We're trying to make this podcast the best it can be. We're also on Twitter, Reddit at Point by Point Pod, and on YouTube that we're streaming live here at Point by Point Tennis Podcast. And so that'll wrap us up, and we'll see you after Rome.
We'll see you after Rome. We'll see you in 2 weeks.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. That was fun.
Yeah.
Fun episode.